Good evening. This is the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 7. I am JP Dinnell, and always I have Lucas with me. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. I just found a PDF copy of Extreme Ownership, so it's easier for me to use on my tablet.
Oh, I like that.
I'm very happy about this.
That's awesome. That's good. Hey, before we kick off this new episode that we're actually going to be just doing straight up Q&A from the interwebs,
which I'm very stoked about.
I'm excited. I know we talked about wanting to do this when we first kicked it off. It's like, hey, weaving this into it, and just based off our schedule and just the format of what we've been doing, like this one, it made sense. And we've got some good questions. I just made a quick last minute social media post, tagged you in it. We got some great questions in there, and we're continuing to get more.
Yeah, your posts tend to blow up. The ones where you ask, of course you don't, because you're a humble beast, as we discovered on the last episode in the YouTube comments.
I'm not happy with you right now. So anyways.
I've got more of them. I have several of them that I'm just like looking at that I'm waiting to just give you an unexpected compliment as it is appropriate for the program.
Are you done?
For now, I'll come back to it.
No,
I'll just read some of these comments. So-and-so, and this isn't a question. So-and-so has a compliment about JP.
And this is the final episode of the JP Dinnell Podcast.
We made it to 7.
We appreciate you guys listening. It's been real. As always. No. I mean, I know we have some good questions.
Yeah, we do.
Do you have any questions or anything to talk about, rehash? We're at the muster recently.
Okay, so this was my first muster experience.
Okay.
And it was a last minute thing, right? We got done. We recorded a podcast. The muster was here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And you looked at me and you were like, hey, do you want to go to the muster? And I was like, oh, it seems like it'd be really cool. And you were like, okay, well, it's in we got done Tuesday night, and you were like, you got to be there like Thursday morning,
Thursday, Friday,
yeah. I was like, all right, well, we'll make it happen. And you got me in touch with Jen.
Yep.
And she's hooked
amazing.
it up.
She's incredible.
So October is Pastor Appreciation Month. So my wife and I were gifted tickets to go see Nate Bargatze. Okay. So, clean comedian. He's hysterical. Us and 6,000 of our closest friends were at this show at the Dickies Arena. Yeah, it was really nice. We wrap that up, go pick up the kid, and then hoof it to the hotel, right, for night one. We get in at like 1 a.m, and you guys start PT at 4:45 a.m.
Yep, everyone meets down there around 4:30 in the morning because that's Jocko's whole thing.
Oh yeah, 4:34, right? Like I saw it on the thing.
Yeah,
Reveille 4:34. All right. Also, I didn't know that's how you spell Reveille.
I couldn't even spell it now if you asked me.
No.
Optional though.
Yeah, it's optional.
The PT is optional.
Optional PT, which you did on the rooftop of the parking garage.
Yep.
So it was wonderful. It was on the concrete, but I knew. Like I had to make one day of PT. Like I knew that I had to, or else I was never going to hear the end of it. So, and I've got a comp ticket. Like you guys are doing such a great job of taking care of me to give me this full experience. Yeah. So I need to do it. So as Kirsten and I were talking, she's like, do you want to just do the PT on Friday? I was like, no, if I get 3 hours of sleep and do the PT on Thursday, then the guys it'll be enough of a like, oh, you know what? He did it.
Yep.
The guys would allow me to have Friday off and be like, great job. She's like, you think so? I was like, 100%. This is how men work. Like, this is it. So I went through, I did it. The PT was awesome.
Yeah.
It is it's a style of workout that I don't normally do. It was, high intensity intervals. The guy that had the megaphone was a jerk.
I know. Can't stand him.
Yeah.
You talking about Jocko or Leif?
I'm talking about JP Dinnell, who had it. But even though, according to Noah Ash, he's so inspiring and he strives to be like this man. So the PT was great, and then we get done and you get everybody together. So what is this thing called?
It's called a cash out.
Okay, a cash out, which is terrible because there's no money involved at all. And you call us all together and we're going to do 40. You say we're going to do 48 squats. You lied to us and said we're going to do 48 squats.
No.
Yes, you did.
It's on video. We're going to do 48 4-count squats. And I gave the demo. Okay, and I said, I will count the 1, 2,
You said
3.
I will count 1, 2, 3, 4, but you didn't tell us 1, 2 is one squat and 3, 4 is another squat. And this was my first day in the military.
Yeah.
So this is why I had no idea.
Hey,
we were actually doing 96 squats. But I will be honest with everybody here. I did 93 because there were a couple of times where you were like 1, 2, and I was like 1, 2 is not happening. We're going to catch you back on 3, 4. So I can't say that I completed the PT, but I got really close, and I'm 3 squats short, which we can cash out at some point in time in the future.
So we did it was 48 4-count squats,
right?
Where I demoed,
which I just learned what it meant.
2, 3, and then the group would count that 1, right?
Yeah.
That 4th count, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3.
But 1,
4.
2 is a squat.
Yeah.
That wasn't communicated until you put the megaphone down and all of us are watching you go 1, 2, and we're just kind of looking at each other like, he just did a squat.
Yeah.
But that's not, we didn't count that one.
I know, it's
and
fun.
so we didn't get to count any of the 1, 2s. Yeah, it was a good
It's
time.
a really good test of like, are people actually paying attention to what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And actually demoing.
Yeah, I certainly watched the demo, but my ears were ringing from all of the other stuff that was happening.
It's awesome because that experience that you had is so common. How many people will come up to me like, so that was, that was 96.
Yeah, like you don't even know how to count.
And I'm like, yeah, it was 48 times 2. It's a 4-count squat. And they're like, oh, I totally missed that right away.
Yeah,
because
even you can tell me it now. And as a musician, a 4-count to me is still 1 because that's 1 measure. That's not 2 squats. This is 1 measure.
Well, wait until we do the 8-count bodybuilders.
I'm going to skip that one. That'll be the day that I miss again.
I'll make sure you're there, and then we'll bring it up. So,
well, JP, you're a good dude, and anybody in Jocko's circle is legit. I'm just going to keep reading these comments.
Close your laptop.
Okay, so that was amazing. I've been to a ton of leadership conferences.
Hundreds of people showed up, by the way.
Oh yeah, like there were at least day 1. I don't know how many people were there day 2 because I did my cash out and slept in. I was a scrub that missed day 2. I was definitely day 2 goon squad.
It's all good.
Yep. So there were at least. By my estimation, having gone up top and kind of looking around, there were at least 400 people that showed up for that, and it's insane.
Yeah, I think we're closer to 600 because we had 1,000 people at the muster.
Good gravy, dude.
Yeah, we've had almost 700 people show up to a PT in Denver, Colorado.
My mother-in-law can't get 13 people at her water aerobics class, and 700 people are jumping up on top of a parking roof.
Bro, it's awesome. My mom used to teach water aerobics for senior citizens
with Danny's mom.
Yeah, well, she taught step aerobics with Danny's mom. So this was at a different club that my mom taught fitness at later on down the road.
Sweet Mary.
I know, she's awesome. But she would teach chair aerobics for senior citizens.
Really?
Yeah, it was so awesome.
Dude,
her heart's amazing.
And then I could see that.
She was incredible.
Yeah.
And everyone loved her.
No doubt.
Everyone loved her. And she also taught water aerobics. And it was the coolest thing ever.
She was my muster partner. She's sitting next to me the whole week.
She loved it because she's like, I was surrounded by pastors. I had, Lucas, and then I had Pastor Ethan. And Pastor Ethan from Milestone is our daughter's youth pastor.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So she's like, she loved it.
Poor. She got no good insight from me at all. Like I can guarantee you that 100%.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but so I've been to a lot of leadership conferences before. There were some things about Echelon Front's muster that really stood out to me that I think. So you were at 001, right? This was according to my mustard book here. This is 017. So you guys have you've done a few of these, and the thing that I've noticed. Or that I noticed the most is that there was no MC. That stood out to me above. Now, did you guys have one at the first one?
Never.
Okay. That's the greatest thing ever is that there is no, and the flow is so seamless, but there's no guy coming out like, trying to keep us entertained and tell a few bad jokes in order to get the next person on. There was none of that. Somebody left. Stage left, and then the next person came in, and the flow was like, it was incredible because we had these like 4-hour blocks where we're learning, right? And then there's a little break in between. We'd have lunch, and then it was another 4-hour block. But like as you would wrap up being like, you have to go to war with complacency, then Jamie's coming up and she's like, the war with complacency is one of the most important things that we can do. And then that leads to how we take extreme ownership in the home. And it was like, okay, so you finished your thing, and then the next person was coming up, adding to the point that you just made. This, I think, though, was the coolest thing for me.
Is the muster workbook.
Is the muster workbook, because it has, like, the outline of it is brilliant, because it's got what the talk was. So this is Mindsets for Victory by Jocko and Leif. There is kind of a synopsis of what the talk is about, all of the major session note points, and then a page where you can take your own notes, so that, you know, and I've got this, I keep this up here at the church. It's my desk reference whenever I'm looking through all this stuff. It's an unbelievable value add to what you guys are doing.
It's a great tool.
Yeah, like
and that's what
one of the
saying.
coolest things.
It's a phenomenal
of the whole
tool.
deal for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I share this often. I don't remember if we shared it on a previous episode or if it was on Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu or when I was on Jocko's. I don't remember, but if I'm repeating it again, sorry, but I'm also not sorry, because maybe it'll reiterate it.
Yeah,
or if
sure.
we have a new listener that hasn't listened to the previous ones. But, you know, we have workbooks like that we create for the field training exercises that we run.
Okay, yeah.
To where when you get done with a run, as soon as you get done with doing a mission, the scenario-based leadership training that we run at Echelon Front, that Cody's in charge of now, and that's a part of the under what I'm in charge of. Under. And man, it's awesome, because they come back and it's immediately like, all right, hey, sit down, fill out your debrief points. Like, let's actually talk. And let's think about, what did you learn? What were your takeaways? How does it apply to your life? And how does it apply to business? Yeah. And so you're immediately capturing all those things. Nothing tactical, nothing like, hey, this is not like I was supposed to go left and I went to the right side. No, we don't care about that. We're not teaching tactics. And so when people start capturing that info, and it's cool, because I get a lot of feedback from people of the training about how it changes their life and improves their marriages and all these things. And there's one guy that reached out to me, and he told me that he was using that workbook as a daily reference.
Oh, no doubt.
Daily reference after the event. And he was like, hey, I just want to thank you for the conversation that you had. You pulled me aside when I was in charge of one of the runs. You corrected the mistakes I was making. Jocko and Leif did the same thing. He's like, I was listening to the debrief. I was taking notes and everything. And he was very intentional about studying that workbook after. And he used it as a daily reference tool. And he shot me a message, and it was like 7 or 9 months after the training.
Yeah.
And dude, talk about a return on investment. He said that his business was $6 million ahead of schedule of where it was supposed to be. And I was like, bro, that's incredible. And he goes, 100% because of the training that I went to and using that tool daily.
That's awesome.
Like, that's insane.
Yeah. And most conferences and stuff that you go to, they give you a notebook. And they're like, here's a little thing. It's got our logo monogrammed on it. And good luck. You know, take whatever notes you need. And here's a nice pen for you to take your notes with. This is the most helpful tool I've ever gotten from a conference, hands down. Have you ever been to a conference where people are waiting outside the door 45 minutes before it opens? No, it's stupid. Like... I'm telling, like, everything about this is ridiculous, right? I also have never been to a conference where people are handing me energy drinks as soon as we walk out. They're like, "Oh, you just got done with a 4-hour thing, and you're about to go have lunch, have some caffeine, and then come back." So the Jocko goes everywhere. The food was good. The food was delicious. Got to try the Jocko tea, which was really good. Yeah, the white tea is great, and it comes in boxes of 100. And it is safe for the pregnant wife, so she's on it. You can get that from, like, people can go to JockoFuel.com and get it from there. They get that 100. That's exactly. Yeah. So we've ordered some stuff from there. So we did that. She absolutely loves the Jocko tea, which I was not sure how that was going to go. Yeah. Right. It doesn't come in the standard tea bag. Yeah. Like, as far as when you look at it, it's not like a pretty thing that's like, ooh, this is lavender and chamomile. Yeah. And there's like a gorilla face on it, and it's like Jocko tea. It just says good. Yeah, that's it. So she's loving it. We've got the Jocko tea rolling at the house. The thing that I think outside of the flow and the workbook is the accessibility of the instructors. Yeah. Dude, I can't tell you. And there's and I'm not going to say the name of the conference, but there's a huge conference that's going on in DFW. That's a pastors conference. There's going to be a couple of thousand pastors that are there. That's incredible. All of the speakers are going to be pastors. When they get off the stage, none of them are going to be accessible. What? It is, and it's the culture of not just like pastoral leadership conferences, but leadership conferences in general, whether it's a Christian leadership conference or anything else you go to. When they step off the stage, right, that's it. You go there to see them speak, and if you wait in line for a book, they'll sign it. The experience at the muster was totally different. Yeah. Right. So you, thank you very much for reserving my seat up at the front. So I'm there, and I'm getting a little early to the afternoon session. I'm sitting in my seat. In front of me is Leif and a young lady whose name I'm forgetting, who works for Echelon Front. She's from Orlando. She's very sweet, and she's taking pictures of Leif with people. Right. Yep. He has like a 15-minute conversation with somebody.
That is,
and that was normal. Like I was watching that happen all over the place. Right? Is that people are coming up to y'all and they're asking you questions about what they've got going on in their business or how they need to handle a situation. I literally watched one of your instructors talk to somebody and then role play with the guy. What the heck? Dude, I've never seen anything like that before. Incredible. And it doesn't matter if it was a leadership conference, if it was, a ministry conference, if it's an equip conference where we're talking about, we've got all these breakout sessions and those kinds of things for sales. I've been to all of those for the various industries and things that I've been into. I have never seen anything like that where the people that are part of the leadership cadre are so intentional. And I literally watched this guy who was like, okay, do you want me to play the employee or do you want me to play you? And they were like, well, I don't know. And he's like, all right, I'll play you. You know the employee that you're trying to deal with more than me, more than I do. So we'll go. And they do it. And man, the guy that was asking questions was such a punk. And then the person from Echelon Front was great. They were professional. They used the exact flow that we had talked about. And then afterwards, they were like, okay, so that's how I need to handle the situation. Like, wait, now we're going to switch roles because now I know the jerk that you think you're dealing with. So I'm going to be that guy and force you to deal with them. And they did the role play. The poor guy just was stumbling all over himself. But at the end, he was like, all right, so these are your coaching tips. These are the areas where you need to detach. This is where you got. You don't get that at any other place. And let me be very clear here. JP and I haven't talked about any of this stuff beforehand about what my impressions with the muster are. He didn't ask me to say any of this stuff. And I'm being honest because there's no reason for me not to be. Yeah. Because you would ask if there was anything that I didn't like, what could be improved on.
For sure.
All those kinds
100%.
of things, right?
And we always seek that at Echelon Front.
And I did there's a survey that goes out. And the 2 minutes, and so that you know which one's mine. I did put my name on it, right?
Oh yeah,
but good. It asks what you think of the speakers. And Jocko is really funny,
dude. He's awesome.
He's hilarious.
Yes.
But in the first session, he wasn't funny at all. It's all business, and I know that it's intentional.
And he's setting the tone,
right? So my piece of feedback that I gave was like, if he leaned into his humor in the first session, like it doesn't have to be at the very beginning, but at the end of the first session or towards the end, because the first session is very Jocko and Leif heavy, which makes sense. That's why a lot of people are there, right?
Yes.
But yeah, just give a little bit of a hint of that humor, because as soon as in session the 2, right? So the afternoon session, as soon as he started to show a little bit of that humor, dude, the emotional timbre of the room totally changed. But the humor that he uses is so strategic. It's all like very intentional. Yeah. And it drew everybody in, right? And then, going through all of those things, I come back to consistently the time that you guys spend and watching. Like, I didn't want to eat up anybody's time. So I just kind of waved. You introduced me to Jocko. I got to, Leif was in front of me. So I said hey to him. But watching y'all interact with the people that are at the muster, not just like answering questions and saying hey to folks, but like helping these people work through the issues that they have at the price point, which is way, way, way lower than what we have paid for other leadership conferences per person, was unbelievable. And I was kind of in awe of it. And every night, Kirsten's asking me, she's like, so how'd it go? And I'm like, I want to go back. I just want to go back and like listen to him talk. Like the production stuff is great. The stuff, the videos and things that Echo and his team makes are great.
Insane. Yeah.
But just the flow going from one speaker to the next, consistently keeping everyone engaged. The breaks and stuff are timed so well, but the intentionality that y'all have with the people that are at the muster, the relationships that you're building there, helping people work through their problems. I have never seen that happen at any leadership conference, and it totally blew me away.
That's right. I appreciate that feedback. And I mean, it's just really cool to be a part of it.
No doubt.
We have another muster coming up in January, and I want to say we're already 70 to 80% sold out.
Really?
Already. Yeah. And we just got done with the other muster 2 weeks ago.
Dude, it's insane.
Yeah. And then we already have tickets sold for the muster in Nashville.
Okay.
Next May. And guess what? We also have tickets already sold for next October's muster back here in Dallas again.
Come on.
So it's just like...
It's insane,
It's incredible. They all sell out, and they will all sell out. San Diego, 100% is going to happen. So, man, that's good. I really, that's cool to hear that. Like you said, we hadn't talked about it yet, and I love hearing that feedback, and I'm obviously going to pass it along to Jocko and Leif and the team.
You don't have to.
No, I'm going to. I will. Because that's what we're always looking for.
Dave Burke's way taller than I thought he was going to be. I don't know anything about, like, I've heard of Dave Burke, right, from reading the books. I've heard you talk about him, and I've seen his name on a can of Jocko Go.
Yeah.
But when I met him, I was like, "It's very nice to meet your navel, sir." Like, it's good. so nice to meet you. He was great. His iterative decision making talk that he gave.
I love it.
We are already implementing that.
That's amazing.
And we're implementing it in our children's ministry.
Yep.
Because
there you go.
The instant feedback that you get from kids is brutal.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like the 4-year-olds, you try this and you're doing all right, so I observed, I oriented, I made a decision, I'm assessing, I hate this. Okay, we're going to go back. We observed that they hated this. What's the next thing? And it's so good. You don't get that kind of feedback from adults.
No.
Not instantly and like to your face. Like they'll send an anonymous email.
Yeah, because to the point of what we talked about on our last episode of having that hard conversation, like, I mean, kids are fearless.
Oh, yeah. They're punks.
Childlike instincts, man. They're incredible. Anything else?
You're absolutely inspiring.
I'm going to break your computer. I'm going to break your computer. All right. We have some questions from Instagram.
Yeah, let's get to our Instagram questions.
The gram. All right, first one from my buddy Ian. This is the kid I was telling you about, that if like you were like, "Hey, I need help," and I couldn't help you, I would call Ian.
Ian is the guy that would do it.
100%.
Ian, thank you for your imaginary help in that episode. I'm very thankful for what you did for me.
I'm actually really, really looking forward to actually having him as a guest.
Oh, that'd be dope.
His story is, bro, it's brutal, man.
Really?
And for him to have the positive mindset that he has for life and God is, dude, he could not on both of those, and I don't know of a lot of people that would hold it against him.
Really?
Yeah. So anyways, Ian, I love you.
Ian, DM me so that I can get you scheduled for the show.
Yep, 100%. So at Ian B. Hamilton, IANBHAMILTON, how did you find purpose after leaving the SEALs? Also, how do you keep your mental health strong?
These are tough questions, man.
Yeah. So, how did you find your purpose after leaving the SEALs? Initially, I didn't, man. And, and you're at the muster, you heard my talk and about how it's important to have a mission and understanding your mission and how your mission is critical to just your success as an individual. And to be honest, my initial purpose was to provide for my family. And I had the opportunity to do sales at a financial company. And I remember I was training MMA at this gym in South Haven, Mississippi. And I met this guy, Joe Bergen. He was training there. Awesome guy. Met his dad, Mark Bergen. And we were actually at a restaurant with a group of people from the gym. My wife was, I think she was working at that restaurant at the time, just kind of helping out. We were just talking about, life. And he's like, what are you going to do when you get out of the SEAL teams? Because I was still in, but I was on like leave and I was helping out. It was just like this unique transition time that I had in my time of the military and getting out. And I said, I don't know, man, like probably go overseas and shoot pirates, you know, because that was like what guys were doing at that time. But I didn't have anything certain set up, and I was having a hard time actually getting things like to come to fruition, and I was getting frustrated, but I realized it was all like by God's intent and by his design and his plan for me. I'd be honest, man, I really wish at that point in my life I was being really intentional with seeking out the Lord's will. I wasn't, you know, I had a good relationship with God. I was praying. I was kind of doing my, you know, man and I were going to church here and there, but we weren't intentionally seeking out his will. And it just shows you God's grace because he still allowed me to have opportunities. And so anyways, we're sitting there and I'm talking with Mark and he goes, you know, I'm owners of this financial company and I'm in charge of like the sales department. And, you know, we're always looking to hire good people. And I was like, well, what do you guys do? And he explained to me like just a very basic Cliff Notes version of what they did. And, you know, he's like, the industry is called factoring. We buy account receivables that have a delay to pay. Our big client base is in the trucking industry. So a trucking company goes and delivers a load to a company and they have an invoice. Let's say it's for $1,000. They're going to have to wait 30, 60, up to 90 days to get paid for that invoice. He goes, we buy the invoice from them and give them 90 to 98% of that upfront, depending on what we negotiate. We wait to get paid. We get paid. We give them the rest of that balance minus our small fee off the back end, depending on how we negotiate it, to help them put gas in their trucks, pay their drivers, and keep building their business. And I'm like, man, that actually makes sense to me. And so I was like, all right. So I talked about it. Amanda and I were talking about it, so I set it up to where I had an interview and I prepped for the interview. I mean, I had my like resume, I had all this stuff like drafted up to where I had folders for all the people that were going to be in there. And like, it just, you know, went in there and, did really well in the interview, like really well. And, they offered me a job. Like, they're like, dude, we'd love for you to come do sales and be a part of what we have going on. And so that was my purpose, was to provide for my family. And I had an understanding of what the company did. And I believed in the company. I believed in the product. But I didn't have like, it wasn't like I didn't make it like a new mission. I didn't make it something that I loved and I was passionate about, because honestly, like I was playing the victim card still of getting out and missing people in the military and missing my friends and feeling guilty for being out while guys are getting injured and killed overseas. And so it took me some time, Ian. It took me some time to actually be intentional with figuring out my purpose. And, you know, it took some trial and error. It took me exploring a lot of different things. You know, I left that company and I started my own consulting company where I was doing team building events and I was teaching shooting tactics and combatives to law enforcement and, you know, first responders, and doing shooting for civilians. And I tried to help a few people build out their training facilities. And man, I was doing a lot of different things. I was chasing things because I had to provide for my family. But Ian, what I failed to do was to be patient. And I didn't actually take the time to sit and think about like big picture. What do I want to do? What brings me fulfillment? What am I good at? Like, and just think about all these things. And, you know, because of Seth, you know, reaching out to Jocko saying, hey, I think JP could use some help. And me also pursuing that with Jocko and being consistent, you know, that's when I had the opportunity to come be a part of Echelon Front. And when I saw what they were doing, I was like, man, I'm all in. I want to help. I want to be a part of this. And, you know, my purpose when I had the opportunity in front of Echelon Front was, man, just to be a good teammate and to take care of Jocko and Leif and to protect what they had built and to pass on the lessons that we had learned in combat and in training to help people apply them to their personal and professional lives so that they could lead and they could win as well. And so when I recognized that how important that purpose was and how it was actually providing value, like providing legitimate value to people, by being honest, by being transparent, by doing the right things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
That's when I really started to understand what my mission was. And to be honest, like I've been doing this for 7 years, and the evolution of my understanding of what my purpose is and what my mission is has also evolved and changed. And, I shared this at the Mastermind talk, we were at a training and Jocko said, when you start caring about your people winning more than you winning yourself, that is when you start to become a good leader. And for me, that was an understanding of like, oh, this is all about my team. This is on me to lead my team, to give them success, to give them victory, to be focused on building out Echelon Front, to be strategic. And I wasn't doing that fully. I wasn't doing that at the level. And I understood like, hey, that's actually my purpose. Like and your purpose is going to shift and change as you grow as an individual. Your capabilities, as your capabilities grow, like you're also going to be more beneficial. You're going to be able to provide more and do more. And so understanding like as you grow as an individual, that purpose can shift and change as well. And understand that there's also seasons in your life. My purpose when I was young in the SEAL teams was to be a good Navy SEAL. That was my purpose, was to be the best that I absolutely could be in the SEAL teams. And then when I got out of the military, because I realized that things were shifting and my purpose was to actually be there for my family, to have a good marriage, to be supportive of Amanda and the kids and Aiden, I lost sight of that. And that's why, I shared on that first episode, Amanda and I got a divorce. Because I wasn't being intentional with the purpose of my marriage and of my family. And so Ian and everyone else that's listening, like you have to be patient with developing what your mission is going to be. You have to be patient with developing that plan and how you're going to execute and what you're going to do. And you have to be intentional with the decisions that you make. And you have to be intentional with making sure that your purpose actually provides you fulfillment. That's really important. Like you got to have fulfillment when you're doing those things. How do you keep your mental health strong? So he said also, how do you keep your mental health strong? Man, I think that goes back to your purpose, because when I have a purpose and a fulfilling mission, it provides me what I need to be mentally stable and clear, and you're not playing the victim card because you have that fulfillment. For me, being mentally strong also comes from me doing hard things, from doing fulfilling things and taking care of people. Like when you make the focus about the people around you, again, doing the right things for the right reasons. And when I understand that, hey, I have a burden to serve and protect and take care of the people that I love and the people are involved in my life, that also helps me have that clarity and that focus that I need to have, and not get sucked into the spiritual warfare of depression, of anger, of anxiety, all those things that affect mental health. That's spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
It's 100% spiritual warfare. So when you can understand that's what it is, you can actually take it personal. You can take it as a personal attack on you, so that you can be on the offense to combat it, to control it. You can control your attitude, control how you react to things that are happening, control your work ethic, control your integrity, control your discipline. When you're controlling those things, it helps you with working through those hard mental health times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you have to add to that question?
I have nothing to add to it. I do have some. Well, I had a question that was written down. How has your purpose evolved and changed? But I think you went over that. And one of the questions that we've gotten, and we got it from I think I'm saying this name right, Bricken and Amanda Derrick, talking about your journey with Amanda. You mentioned that we need to get her on the show for the two of y'all to talk about that. And I would love to figure out when we can make that happen, because that whole story about what happens with you after the SEALs, that her, filing divorce papers, you guys having your marriage restored.
Yeah.
That's such an integral part of every bit of what happens afterwards.
Yeah.
But it also, it kind of circles around both of these questions, 100%. Right?
100%.
So yeah, I would love to get her on and
I want to also have like my cousin on that I was actually spending time with in Arizona the other day. His story is just, what he's dealt with and fought through and struggled with for the last 5 years is just, dude, it's humbling, man. And it makes me like really realize, I'm like, dude, I am really weak compared to like what he's been able to endure and push through. And I'm super proud of him, love him, my cousin Matt. And I want to get him on the podcast to share his story. That's one of the things that we're talking about is purpose. And I said, sometimes the greatest purpose that you can have in life is just being a really good husband.
Yeah.
Because all the other stuff, if you don't have your marriage, it doesn't matter. If you end up getting a divorce, if you end up miserable, if you're not happy, like none of that stuff matters. And when that happened to Amanda and I, nothing else mattered. Like nothing gave me fulfillment. I wasn't happy. It didn't matter that I was starting to make really good money. None of that stuff mattered.
Yeah.
Like I've like I've said this before. I've made good money and been happy. I've made good money and been miserable. We've had no money and been miserable, and we've had no money and been really happy.
Yeah.
So those things actually don't define success and happiness. It's understanding what your purpose is.
Yeah.
And like being a good husband and a good father and a good reflection of the love that God has for us and Jesus shows for us, and to be a good Christian and to represent Jesus the right way.
Yeah.
That's a pretty solid purpose right there.
No doubt. That is the purpose we're all commissioned with. Right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You ready for question number 2?
Yeah.
From Bobby K5.
Bobby K5, what up?
Are you still not drinking alcohol? And if so, what benefits do you see from stopping?
Yeah, last week we talked that when that episode out, I think it was like 265 days, no alcohol. So now when this one comes out, it would be like 272 days or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, still not drinking alcohol. If so, what benefits do you see from stopping? Man, there a lot, right? Just mental clarity, not dragging throughout the mornings or the days. It reduces stupid arguments. I'm more present with my wife, more present with my kids. You're not wasting money on alcohol.
I was going to say the money thing would be...
The financial thing's huge, man.
Yeah.
Financial thing is huge because I like to have fun with my friends and entertain, and you know, so if I'm drinking, it's like, cool, let's go.
Yeah.
And then you're like, what did I? Oh man, okay, cool, whatever. That's stupid, So I'm not wasting money. The risk, there's zero risk of a DUI. You know what I mean? And so there's like a zero, I'm not going to hurt myself. I'm not going to hurt my family. I'm not going to hurt somebody else. I'm not making stupid decisions. And just understanding that alcohol is an actual poison.
Yeah. It's
poisoning your brain. Nothing good comes from drinking alcohol. Is there any, I mean, just, understanding that for me, it just wasn't whatever. And I've said this before. It's hey, and someone's like, well, you're giving yourself an out. I'm like, well, because I never said I'm just not going to drink for the rest of my life. I decided I'm not going to drink anymore. And dude, if I want to have a glass of wine with my wife one night, I have no problem with doing that.
Right.
And I have no problem. And guess what? I'll tell everybody. It's not like I'm going to hide it and be like, yep, day 361.
Yeah.
No, I'll be like, cool, day 1. Wait, what do you mean day 1? I had wine with my wife last night. Why?
Yeah.
Because you know what? I just wanted to have a nice glass of red wine with my wife, and we grilled up some little calico steaks.
I was going to say, yep.
It sounded
ribeye.
And for me, it just was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's freaking.
Yeah, you're not. And I think it's different when it's a change that you're making, because you had an addiction, right? So if you're an alcoholic and you make it to day 361 and then you break your sobriety, that's a much different thing than I decided I'm not going to have alcohol because I want to make this lifestyle change because I think it's a healthy decision for me instead of...
And I wanted to help other people, so...
Right, instead of I'm making this lifestyle change because it has an addictive pull and hold over my life.
Yeah.
One of those things you need deliverance from, and one of those things you're doing in order to encourage others and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's that goes back to, for me, that goes back to the stuff that Paul says, don't flaunt the freedom that you have over others. Instead, encourage them and build them up.
Dude,
So yeah, it falls into that category. I think what you're doing is cool, and I admire it a ton.
Well, I appreciate it. It's fun. I was flying back today from Tucson, Arizona, and they're like, "You want something to drink?" And I'm like, "No, thank you." And, you want any wine, alcohol, beer? And I'm like, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
And I was just like, and what I recognize is funny because it gets to the row right behind me, and I know like this lady wasn't trying to be like better than anybody else. The lady was like, "Would you like some? Do you want any wine or anything?" And she goes, "I don't drink alcohol." It was just funny, like the way she said it was.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, a simple no would have been fine. Like, no,
Right.
thank you. But it's funny, like that. What is it called? Virtue
signaling.
Signaling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that drives me crazy.
Yeah,
when
it's
people do
pretty.
that.
It's cringy, as the kids say.
Cringy. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, I'll keep on the path. And hey, here's the deal. If I have some wine with my wife, y'all will know about it. It's not like something I'm trying to hide, but for me, there's been a lot of benefits. It's only made things better. So, I mean, whatever, we'll keep going.
Yeah.
We'll keep it going for sure.
Quentin 3 by
I like this name.
Guy Jason Wilson.
Guy _Jason Wilson.
Do you think his first name is Guy, or is he just like letting us know
he's the guy?
He's the guy. Yeah. How do you tackle new career/job that you're not sure you're going to be able to do?
Dude, small iterative decision making. Jocko talks about it in Leadership Strategy and Tactics. So,
Ooh.
I mean, I'm just going to pull out the book.
Bum, bum, bum.
And so the new edition that he has out, we're talking page 191. It's iterative decision making. Be decisive. Leaders are often told. I'm just going to read the parts that I've highlighted. You should grab the book. You should read it all.
I'm following along in my
Take your
copy.
notes, highlight, do whatever. Anyways, be decisive. Leaders are often told. Indecision can make horrible situations worse. In the SEAL teams, indecision is commonly called analyst paralysis. That means a leader is overwhelmed by the events unfolding around them and can't decide what to do. That's why detachment is a superpower. That was my own little thought I added in there. It can occur in any leadership environment, and it is not good. If you aren't maneuvering, the enemy is, and allowing the enemy to maneuver is one way to allow them to get the upper hand. Of course, rushing to make a decision without fully understanding what is happening can be just as bad. If we scroll down, making a rash call is clearly not the right thing to do in that situation. As a leader, you have to learn to let the situation develop. Man, just think about that. As a leader, you have to learn to let the situation develop.
I don't like that.
Nobody does. Nobody does. That's the problem. That's why detachment is a superpower. That's why pausing, thinking, analyzing, and then also just going, the counter to that is doing all those things and then go do something. Make a small little decision to where if it's a wrong step, okay, cool. You know what? We won't keep going down that path. And he goes on to say, until you have a relatively good idea of what is going on, it is foolish to make a conclusive decision about what you and your team should do. Think about how people do that in business. They're like, hey, I think this is going to be a really good idea. They go get out a loan for hundreds of thousands of dollars, even millions of dollars. Think about it. People raise millions of dollars of private people's funding to give them stakes of equity in a company because they think it's a good idea. They haven't done. I was talking with my cousin about this, Matt, that I was just talking about.
Yeah.
Super intelligent dude. His business IQ is incredible. Really good with like bookkeeping and accounting and that stuff. His dad is incredible. His dad's dad, his grandfather was incredible with that. Like big accounting business that he runs in the Sacramento, California area. Mike Lenhart, my uncle, phenomenal bookkeeper and accountant, runs a very successful business. Matt's definitely got all those traits within him. He's super intelligent. So he's got it from that side of the family. And then my grandfather's side of the family, he was really like numbers and stuff like that. So Matt's like this little super child when it comes to like numbers and that stuff. And we were talking through business stuff and everything. And he was just like breaking down all these different business things that he's done and, raising capital and all the plans and everything. And I'm like, dude, like just listening to him talk was really cool. And it just reminded me that a lot of people don't put that much thought into it. They're just like, oh, I'm just going to go do this because it's a good idea. They don't actually think through things. And then when they do something, they overcommit. And it's like, no, you got to make small little iterative decisions. So as he goes on to say in the book, when I've been unsure about a situation or did not have enough good information to make a bold, clear decision, I utilize an iterative decision-making process. That means I looked at the situation and made small decisions to move forward a direction that aligned with my best guess on what the situation was without overcommitting since I wasn't sure. That's how you tackle a new career job if you're not sure what you're able to do. Desire and capabilities are two different things. We've talked about that before. Desire and capabilities are two different things. You have to think, you have to analyze, you have to reassess, you have to get different perspectives because you have to understand your perspective is also flawed. There's a lot of things I'm like, man, this is going to be awesome. Everyone's going to get on board with this. And you're like, oh, actually, I'm just the only one that thinks this is awesome. And then there's other things you're like, bro, no way. That's stupid. No one's, and then all of a sudden everyone likes it. So just get perspective, challenge yourself and seek the wisdom and guidance of other people around you.
Yeah.
Like bring it to other people that have success and or a completely detached perspective. Now, the advice I'd give to that is be selective with who you're asking advice from.
No doubt.
Would you live their life? If you'd say no, then I'd be careful asking advice from them. Yeah. I said be careful. Be careful. Just be careful. I'm not saying that their advice isn't valid.
Right.
But you should be selective in who you seek advice from. Going back to what we were talking about the last episode, like, hey, do they want you to win?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, would you live their life? Meaning, are they in that position where they want you to be successful? Do they want you to win? Are they envious of you? Are they jealous of you? Are they proud of you? So I want someone who's proud of me. I want someone that supports me. I want somebody that wants me to win solely for me to win. Because that's what I want for the people around me. Agreed. I don't want them to win so that I can win. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm going to do what I need to do to win, but I want you to win in life. And I actually want to win in life so that you can win with me, but I don't want you to win so that I can win with you.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we have that perspective. Just my thoughts. Make small iterative decisions. Be patient. Be smart. Remove your emotions. Detach from your emotions, man. Detachment is a superpower. What's up?
So this makes me think of like, you're talking about like, all right, you think this is a great idea. You cast the vision and you go forward. You guys talk a lot about leading up and down the chain of command.
Yeah.
And anytime I have seen this from like coming from the lower part of the chain command upward, it feels like rebellion, right? Here's all the things I think you should change to make your company better. And the leadership is like, hey, squash. Yeah. And I've heard it said that, pressure from above is authority and pressure from below is rebellion, which is why it's so important to look at the tactics and the strategies that you guys put out, because when you're causing pressure from below versus leading from below, those are two totally different things. And it's been my experience that like when you use iterative decision making, right? That we just recently had this happen. We did something new. There were some people from our staff that weren't quite 100%. I won't say they weren't on board, but they weren't 100% convinced of something. And so when somebody was asking, hey, why are we doing this? They're like, look, these are the reasons that he gave me as to why. And I always encourage everybody to be honest, right? So these are the reasons Lucas gave me as to why we're doing this. I'm not 100% sold on this idea, but I do know that more oftentimes than not, he does things that I'm not exactly sure why he's doing them, but they work out because he sees a part of the picture that I don't. So I'm confident that if this is the decision that we're making, that there's a good enough reason behind it, we should go and support it, even if I don't completely understand every bit of it. That iterative decision making builds confidence with people, and it's super important in leadership.
Yeah. And so I like how you said like leading up versus rebellion. Or like obviously, clearly those are two different things,
right?
And to me, that's about your posture as an individual and your intentions. Mm-hmm. And just think about
your intent has a smell.
Your intent has a smell, like Jocko says, but also look at it from a relationship standpoint.
Yeah,
if you have a really good relationship with your leadership, you can challenge things. You can push back on things. You can ask questions. I can say, hey, Jocko, I understand what you're wanting us to accomplish, but I just don't understand how this is going to get us there. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm having a really hard time connecting the dots, and I'm just wondering, like, could you explain it to me in a different way? Or, hey, is there something I'm missing? Hey, here's the notes that I took from our meeting. What did I miss? And when you have that good posture and that attitude, and your tone, tact, delivery of your message is done the right way, then you can actually have a conversation, and he's not going to be like, how dare you challenge me?
Yeah. And there's, I think there's something in Napoleon's book on war where he was like, if you are leading soldiers into battle and you have a bad command, but you follow through with it anyway instead of doing it, you're culpable for the deaths of all of those soldiers. And if you didn't die, then you didn't do enough. Like,
all right.
Thanks, Napoleon.
That's amazing.
You want to get to Joey_Dots? What was it like running point? I want real in-depth play-by-play.
So when he says, what was it like running point, means when I was our point man, which means I was in that position where I was the number one guy in the patrol, leading the patrol, out on missions from point A to point B, back to point A, or point A to point B to C, D, D, or whatever, right? I was always that person in the front leading point. Dude, it was intense, man. Like, you have to be dialed in the whole time, because you're scanning for threats, you're scanning for enemy fighters, you're looking for things that are out of place. You have to have that route memorized. You have to have your secondary route, your tertiary routes memorized. You have to be able to understand, like, as you're progressing along your route, what your new alternative routes are now going to be based off of the location of where you're at. Like, you have all this information. You have to study everything ahead of time. I mean, it was exhausting.
Yeah.
It was absolutely exhausting, and you couldn't turn it off. I mean, you could, but if you did that, I mean, you're going to get yourself killed and get your guys killed.
Yeah.
And, that was that thing where, like, you really, really had to go to war with complacency. Like, you couldn't let the disease of victory to creep in. You had to be just intentional with everything. I mean, there was times where we were going through a really, really bad area, and we knew that. And it was to the point where it's like, hey, only step where I step, because we know this route is full of IEDs. And we were single file with enough separation to where if I stepped on an IED, it wasn't going to kill Mikey right behind me.
So what's going through your head when you do that?
I had full submission and, like, surrender to God on that deployment. And I was like, well, if it's my time, it's my time. I hope I go out in a gunfight, not stepping on an IED. But I would just literally ask God to guide every single one of my steps. And, I mean, it's like when you're sitting there and you're briefing the route and you're talking with the guys, and Seth's like, hey, like, literally, we are going to follow each other's exact steps. And we had enough spacing in the patrol. I mean, it was intense. I mean, you have to be fully dialed in, and you're listening to everything around you. Like, you're scanning the trash. Like, hey, why does that trash not look as dirty as it should be? Or why does that look dirtier than it should be? And is that paint different than the rest of the paint on the wall? Why is that paint not dirty? Why is it fresh? And we would see things like that, and you'd call it in, and they'd find explosives and IEDs built into the walls that we'd be patrolling by.
Good grief.
Yeah, they would, use piles of rubble and garbage to hide the IEDs that they were placing.
And so you were trying to figure out whether or not the trash looked dirty enough or too dirty?
Yes. To see if it was out of place. That's why I think
crazy.
That's why I catch little things that people are like, wait, what? How? I was getting my hair cut the other day, and I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at the wall, and I'm like, that's not normal. There's like one little thing off on this wooden wall.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I'm like, hey, I was like looking in and I was like, you either have like black mold here or like that's like an insect caterpillar. I can't tell. And she's like, what? And I'm like, go get me a paper towel. And I go and I pull it out and it was like black mold that had been sporing and growing just because, I mean, yeah, think about it. Right. It's not like the place was dirty.
Right.
But that
stuff gets everywhere.
Yeah, everything. And I was like, hey, what's on the other side of this wall? She's like, a bathroom. I'm like, so plumbing? She's like, yeah. And I was like, you might want to let the owner know. And she's like, how did you see it? It literally was like blended. She's like, she's all freaking out. She's like, I have asthma problems, all these other things. I'm like, well, and so I'm like looking around everything else. And she's like, how? I don't understand. And I was like, I'm not going to like get into like, this is why, this is my background. And I was like, I'm weird. And I notice things that most people don't.
Yeah. She
was completely just like, what the heck? And my wife knows that, but my wife knows, like, she's like, you see things that other people can't see, or you notice it, like, weird. I mean, it's not the major, but when we were walking back in, like, you and I were talking, I'm like, you want to grab your coffee mug? And you're like, yep. And it looked out of place, and then I recognized, oh yeah, that's right. He probably set his coffee mug down because it wasn't like with the rest of them.
He did, and he would have been looking for it as soon as he sat down, and we would have spent 10 minutes trying to find my stupid mug that was just sitting out on the desk. Yep.
Yeah, so I think, Joey, it's just all about being intentional. And I also understood the burden that came with my position.
Yeah.
And man, dude, there was one time where we did what I told you, where it was like, hey, only step where you're the guy stepping. And we got into the building that we were headed to, and we cleared through the building, and we just knew it was going to be like really, really dangerous. And it was just like, okay, that's like solid steps like the whole way. And like, it's hot. You got sweat dripping down in your face. You're also trying, while you're looking at the ground and at the walls and the trash and the rubble and the piles of dirt and the piles of rock. And you're like, okay, is that fresh? Is that you? Like, did somebody dump that? Is something buried there? You're also scanning and looking at people that are in their vehicles. And how is somebody looking at me? Are they looking at me because they're curious? Are they looking at me with hate in their eyes? Are they communicating to somebody else? Hey, pigeons just got released from a building. Oh, that's how they're signaling that we're in the area. Like, all these things, you're looking at in windows. Hey, was there a shadow moving in there? Is that just somebody normal, or did they move with intent? Is that an enemy fighter? Was there a silhouette of a weapon with them?
Wow.
You're scanning all these things. It's the OODA loop, like we were talking about. You're observing what's happening around you. You orient yourself in regards to what's happening. You decide what you need to do, and then you take action. But it's this constant assessment. And I love how Dave talks about the OODA loop. He says, life is one big OODA loop, and we are living OODA loops within OODA loops within OODA loops.
It sounds like a cereal when you put it like that.
It sounds delicious. Like Honey Nut Cheerios. I would crush a bowl of that right now.
No doubt.
So yeah, running point was intense. We had to be super intentional. You had to trust your teammates to also pick up because there's times when I'm running point, like the only thing I'm focused on is 180 degrees in front of me. And I have to know that Mikey is covering my back and he's covering over here. And the guy behind Mikey is covering his back and everything on the other side. Everyone has their fields of fire. And it's from then, and when you work as a team, then I know they all have my back. So it allows me to do my job, and they know that I have their back by being fully intentional with leading that patrol in there. And like I said, just like I knew that whole city. Yeah, I knew everything about that city. I would patrol with a camera on the front of my body armor, and I'd get back from patrols, and I would review the video to memorize the walls and the cities and everything. So if you went back out there, you're like, that wasn't painted there 2 days ago. And we'd call it in, and there'd be IEDs placed behind the wall and stuff like that. But yeah, so this one was pretty intense. We got to that building, we set security, we called in the route. Dude, they hit like 7 IEDs along the route that we patrolled.
Good grief.
The tanks did. And then the tank in front of our building, I remember we were on top of the roof, and they hit an IED that disabled an M1 Abrams battle tank. That's a 70-ton piece of equipment. Hit such a large IED, improvised roadside bomb. It was so large, and that was exactly where we patrolled by.
Good grief.
So the grace of God was real.
Yeah,
protection.
No joke.
But yeah, you had to be on.
Yeah.
You had to be on. And it was also very rewarding. I loved it, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I loved it, man. But it was exhausting. And that whole deployment was like that. It was intense, man. So
do you mind talking about it? Like I guess my great uncle was in the Pacific.
Yeah.
Right? He was
intense.
Yeah, but like he didn't want to talk about it. We would talk to him and the only things he would tell us is that we needed to burn our Nintendo because it was made in Japan. It's the only, like, that was it. That's all I love it. He wanted to, the only discussion he would have is, have you burned your Nintendo? We'd be like, oh, we got questions about World War II. And he's like, have you burned your Nintendo? Nope, I don't want to answer any of your questions. And like, that was it. But I guess like for every generation of the family who had questions for him, that was kind of his way of, like, he would find a way to say, no, I'm not going to answer your question.
Yeah.
And in that way. And I mean,
the wars that they dealt with, man, those generations, I mean, that was brutal, man.
Yeah.
It was just brutal.
It's a different type of warfare.
It's a different type of warfare. And you also have to think, like, the exposure to war and those things weren't that big. Like, they weren't watching conflict on TV.
Yeah.
Times were a lot more wholesome and pure and good. And now you think about it, I mean, think about what people can look up on YouTube. Like, that's just true. disgusting videos, right? Of beheadings and torture and horrible things, and I'll keep it at that because of our listeners, But I mean, it's just, we're exposed as a society to all these extreme things, that I think it's easier for our generation to talk about it. But the flip side is, I know guys from our generation, that don't like to talk about it, that they can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to your purpose and understanding, like, hey, you got to live your life to honor them. And if you have a mission that's fulfilling, and understand that, like, for me, it's hard to talk about it, but it's good to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I understand that because originally I didn't want to be on Jocko's podcast. I was super nervous. I didn't want to share my story. And he said, if your story could help change one person's life, is it worth it? I said, yeah. He's like, okay, let's record. I was going to back out of that.
Yeah.
Cause I was just like, what? And I also knew that, like, man, I had screwed up a lot of things. And I wasn't sure if that's something I wanted to actually talk about and admit, And so, for me, understanding, like, hey, man, if you can talk about these things and tie it into things that could help somebody else, then that means that you're serving those people. You're helping them and you're taking care of them. So for me, it's just that shift of that mindset.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Next question. Question 4. It's from Kyle_Sparks93. I really like this question. How do you hear God speak to you? I've struggled with it the last few months. I've prayed, and I don't know if I'm missing him talking to me or just not recognizing it.
That's good. And this is one of those hard questions that I was like, do I want to put this on there? Because I don't know if I'm going to answer it correctly. But then I also realized, how do you hear God speak to you? Yeah. So he's asking me.
He's asking
me for my input. Struggle with it the last few months, and man, I get it, man. Mm-hmm. And so my perspective, and I want to hear this from you as well, is as I was thinking about this, it was hard for me to hear God speak to me when I had created separation.
Ooh.
And as I've tried to be more intentional with strengthening my relationship with God, with being intentional with listening to praise and worship, being intentional with reading the Bible, putting on the armor of God, and understanding the Word, and seeking, like, His will and His like, direction for me.
Yeah,
it's been easier for me to see things and feel things and say, like, okay, this actually makes sense, or things kind of open up to me. but my pastor Tyron, he delivered an incredible message last Sunday. And he was like, I love how he's like, man, there's only been a handful of times in my life that I've actually heard God speak to me.
Yeah.
And I love how transparent he is. He's like, it's not like a common thing where it's like, Lucas, this is what I need you to do.
No.
That's not what it is. And so I really want your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Because the Bible tells us to hold every thought captive.
Right.
And so when you're thinking these things, when you have these thoughts and these instincts, ask yourself, where is this source coming from?
Mm-hmm.
If it has ill intention or anything that's not of the word attached to it, well, we know that's the devil trying to plant those negative seeds and creep it back into your life. If it's seems like something that would be of the Bible or for you to do as a Christian, to serve people, to love them, to take care of them and support them, well, think about it. And then also I would suggest seek the wisdom of a spiritual elder or leader or somebody that you know that you can say, hey man, God's telling me to, man, God, this family from our church, they don't have any vehicles. They're having an Uber to church. They're having an Uber to work. And man, God's really telling them to give them my brand new vehicle. Like, cause that's a thought that could creep in.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I love how you looked at me like, wait, huh? This is hypothetical, right? Like you looked at me and, but that's something that could creep in. And,
for sure.
I was actually talking to Pastor T about this Tyron the other day, and I was just like, I think I talked about this on Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu recently. I was like, I told him, and we were laughing. I was like, man, if I just acted on every thought that I thought was a good thought, man, I'd have nothing because I give away everything in my life. And he was laughing. He's like, yeah, well, you're a very generous person, and two, like, yeah, you got to seek wisdom and counsel on those things. And so I would say, hold every thought captive. And then bounce it off of other people. Yeah. Just ask them like, hey man, I feel like God's telling me to do this thing. And then actually have a rational conversation about it. But to go back to my first initial statement is it's been hard for me to hear from the Lord, meaning like feel guidance and feel a prompting when I created that separation.
Yeah. I would echo that first, is that anytime, especially if it's resentment, right? And resentment against another believer. Like you know that if your daughters are in conflict, right? If they're arguing with each other, they also are damaging their relationship with you because you don't want your kids fighting. And so until that conflict is resolved, even if it's small, like there is a part of you that wants their conflict to be resolved, and it is causing a rift, even if it's a small one, in their relationship with you. And God's the same way, right? Like, and he uses that example as one of the things I think it's in the book of James, is that if you have conflict with a brother, that you need to work it out because it's damaging your relationship with God. So that's something to consider. I'm going to use what may come across as a cop-out answer, but I promise you that it's not. And the reason I say it's not is because this has been one of the things that I've had to do in my life in particular. So it goes like this. If I don't hear God, right? If I want to know what God is saying to me, or if I want God to speak to me, then the best thing that I can do is to read God's word. And if I want God to speak to me audibly, then I should read God's word out loud. Ooh. Right? So like those are the two basic things that I send everybody back to, is if we're studying the scripture, that is how God speaks to us primarily. That's what he left for us, is his word, which was inspired by his Holy Spirit, that it is inerrant and it was given to the gospel writers so that we could know what God wants from us. And starting with, the Psalms and the Proverbs is a great way to do it. I know you read a proverb a day. One of the other books, and a lot of people hate on it, but is Ecclesiastes.
Why would people hate on Ecclesiastes?
So people hate on Ecclesiastes because it's depressing. Like meaningless, everything's meaningless. Like, okay, yeah, well, that's, yeah, right. So, but that said, that there's a Christian comedian named Jeff Allen, and Jeff was an alcoholic. He used to like open for Seinfeld, and Seinfeld stopped using him because he was so miserable. Like they would be in the line to get paychecks from a club, and Jeff would be like complaining, and Jerry was like, do you even want to do this? Like you're one of the most terrible people to be around. He's like, the reason you're not coming up with new funny material is because you're miserable to be around. And so Jeff is like doing this self-examination. He gets a CD from Tommy Nelson's church, from Tommy Nelson, who is the pastor at Denton Bible here in Denton. Jeff lives in Nashville. A friend of his that he used to golf with sends him these CDs. He listens to it. He's doing Ecclesiastes, meaningless, meaningless, everything's meaningless. And Jeff's like, I know, that's exactly how I feel. And that's what eventually like leads him to Christ, is because he agrees that everything's meaningless. So whether you're feeling like things are great or you're feeling like things are low, there is a place in God's word that relates exactly to that position that you're in. So if you really want to hear God's voice, know what God's saying, read the scripture. If you want to hear God talk to you audibly, read it out loud. And there's so much instruction, especially if you're reading it out loud, that you're going to garner from that is going to be life-changing, well more than you would anticipate,
Dude,
reading out loud would be.
I like that a lot. As you were talking, I was on my phone looking up some Bible verses, and then it ran me to another random thought that one of my friends sent me a text about, like, just similar to what we're talking about, and it just confirmed what you're just talking about, which is crazy. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. From @BR_Van_Horn. I wonder what that BR stands for. I should have clicked on their profiles to see if their name was. I didn't even think about
I
it.
want to fill in the blanks for what these things could
That's
stand for.
Favorite verse. Man, I keep falling back to like our very first podcast, what we talked about, Proverbs 3:5-6.
Yeah.
Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all that you do, and he will show you which path to take. And man, I think that ties into what guy Jason Wilson asked us. I think it ties into what Ian asked us. Bobby, even from the whole alcohol thing, right? Trust in the Lord. Seek his will. I'm not seeking his will when I'm getting hammered, I'll tell you that much. What was it like running point? Trust in the Lord with all your heart.
Yep.
Do not depend on my own understanding. How do you hear God speak? To me, that verse is just like, dude.
It kind of covers it all.
It does.
That's pretty awesome.
I think so.
All right. @_real man to listen to. It took me a while to figure this out, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, is this guy Polynesian? Who is real man to listen to? But real man to listen to, I think I figured it out. How did you become a Christian?
Fun fact.
Ready?
This guy is Stephen Little's uncle.
Oh, really? Is this the sheriff?
No.
Okay.
No. The sheriff is Rocky.
Right. Yeah. This is another uncle.
Yeah. Anyways, so how did I become a Christian? I was born and raised in the church. Grew up in church and was around it my whole life growing up. And then as a young kid, just understanding the importance of salvation. And I remember asking and telling my parents that I want to be saved. I want to dedicate my life to Jesus. And it was my decision to get baptized as well. So it's been in my life I'm thankful that my parents had us in church. Yeah.
All right. Next question. @Dan Pizzini.
Yep.
Pizzini. What would you suggest for someone who'd love to train BJJ but doesn't have any academies anywhere near them?
Dude, I want to know where they live, because for
From
me,
book 3.
dude, but still, that's like kind of crazy that there's no jiu-jitsu academies around them. But so I'll share a story and then I'll give my answer. Pete Roberts and Rafael Formiga Barbosa. Formiga is my professor now.
Yeah.
I want to say 5 or at least 3 years, maybe 5 years. I think it's 3. I don't know. 3 years straight. Each of them, they were both training under Dideko and Alexei. That's who their professor is. Dideko invested into Origin to help start that with Peter.
Oh,
right?
that's
So
sick.
he gave the initial money to start Origin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Smart investment, Dideko.
Thank you very much, Dideko.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for these pants.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for everything, Professor. So Pete would drive down 2.5 hours.
Oh,
Formiga would drive up 2.5 hours every Friday to train under Dideko, because that was the closest black belt.
Yeah.
They would both train under him for hours. They would both drive back 2.5, 3 hours, teach the Friday night class based off of what they learned. And then Saturday, Sunday, and the rest of the week, everything they taught was based off of what they learned from Dedeco that Friday.
Oh, wow.
And they did it every single Friday. Did not miss one Friday for 3 years straight.
Dang.
I always like to share that story because when people are like, man, I got this really good gym, but it's so far away. I'm like, okay, what's the gym? And I'm like, yeah, that's a great gym. And they're like, yeah, but it's like 35 minutes from my house. I just start laughing. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be a jerk, but I'm like, 35 minutes to have like the access to the best gym. And so, but here's the deal. I also love jiu-jitsu. They don't love it yet. They don't understand it yet. And so, but back in the day, like people would travel. There were some people that would travel 6 to 7 hours to go train with a black belt. To be able to train under a black belt, they're like, oh my gosh, Pete talks about it. I love listening to them talk about it. Like back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And so here's the deal. Let's just say that's the case. And you're like, dude, there's not a gym that's like 3 hours away from you. Okay. YouTube University, baby.
I was going to ask. So like, who would you recommend on YouTube?
I mean, Formiga has videos.
Okay.
Dedeco has videos. Oh, Dedeco on his Instagram puts out not daily. He puts out training videos all the time.
Really?
My buddy Birdman Jiu-Jitsu. I'll look up his stuff. Actually, while we're talking, he puts out videos all the time. My buddy Michael Craigholm has an amazing business that he started. It's called Space Coast Jiu-Jitsu, mobile jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
He comes to you with mats.
What?
Yes.
That sounds awesome.
Literally, mobile jiu-jitsu. Oh, cool. You can't train? Or, hey, you only have an hour break at work? Cool. I'll come set up mats in your office.
And we'll just train.
You want to train? Let's train.
That's cool.
Clean gi, clean mats, everything comes to you. Hey, you want to go train on the beach? Cool. Let's do it. Dude. Yeah. So my buddy, shout out. And also Michael is a retired Marine Corps officer, saw combat in Fallujah, and a lot of different areas as well. Wow. Like literally I think he has Purple Heart, Silver Star, Bronze Stars with Valor. I mean, the dude's like legit hero. Amazing combat leader. But he is also a third degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. So his business is called Space Coast Mobile Jiu-Jitsu LLC, where the dojo comes to you. It's amazing, dude.
That is awesome.
His Instagram page is incredible. And he puts out videos. Birdman. Let's see. Let me look it up. Birdman. Oh, there it is. Yep. Birdman_BJJ. John Birdman Finn. He's a 4th degree black belt under Henzo Gracie, who is just
he's pretty good.
Dude, old school gangster jiu-jitsu.
I would take a class from him if it was offered.
Oh, I want Birdman to come out and do a seminar here.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And him and Formiga are buddies. They've been at immersion camp together, training together. And Formiga's like, his jiu-jitsu is really good. I'm like, yeah.
There's a guy that we used to watch. I don't know. I think he's been to immersion camp before. Who does Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, Chewy.
Yeah.
He does videos as well. His YouTube is great.
His YouTube is huge.
Yeah. But he puts out really good stuff.
Yeah, it's solid content.
Victory MMA, Jocko's Gym. They put out videos and moves of the day as well. You could. Dude, dude, my buddy's at. It's right there in front of BJJ Fanatics.
Oh, yeah.
Like where you literally can go on there and buy courses. You can go on there and buy Dean Lister's course. You can go on there and buy some of Formiga's courses.
Stefan Banta's got a course on there.
He's got a course as well. So you can go on there and you can buy these courses and now watch the videos, study the videos, and then, hey, here's the deal. Have a buddy come over and like, hey, let's watch this video. Let's study it. Let's break it down. Okay, hey, let's try this. Let's do this. Gracie University, they have like an online jiu-jitsu thing as well. One of the Gracies, I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he was on Jocko's podcast. He did like the 31 or 32 steps to jiu-jitsu or whatever it was. But, he created that to where that's the whole thing. It's like where you start doing jiu-jitsu in your garage and you have people that come around and network that can get in the network to come train with you. There's a lot of resources. So online you have access to like just a lot of incredible stuff. But man, there's nothing beats actually being in a gym. So let's say you do all that online stuff, and then you're practicing with a buddy. Dedicate one day to go drive to a gym, and and tell the gym and say, hey, it's a 90-minute drive for me one way. Which, by the way, people do that every day of the week to come train at Formigas. Just FYI, putting that out there. There's a few guys that drive 90 minutes one way
every day,
Monday through Friday.
Yep.
But let's just say you can only do it once a week. I get it. Some people, that's our only availability. Yeah. You can actually talk to that professor and say, hey, can I just pay by the class? Because I'm not going to be able to train enough for it to make sense for me to have a full-time membership. Right. I want to learn under you. I want to train under you. Except my only thing is once a week. And it's going to be a 2-hour drive each way. Can I just pay per class? Can I buy classes in a bundle?
Yeah.
Some gyms offer that. So.
Yeah. And there's a lot of them that will. I will say, when you find your training partner or you got a buddy that wants to help you out, please, 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 if you don't have the supervision of a coach, be super careful, man. This stuff, like the first time that you put somebody in an armbar, it's going to feel great to have executed the submission, right? Yeah. But just a little tweak one way or the other, man, and you can hurt somebody really, really bad with very, very, very little pressure. So make sure that you're taking good care. If you're at a gym, they're going to tell you constantly, take good care of your training partners, take good care of your training partners.
Yeah.
If you're doing it online or you're learning with your brothers or those kinds of things, because that's what we did, right? We learned so many things. I'm the oldest of 4.
Yeah.
Me and my 2 younger brothers, we learned a ton of stuff, like the wrestling takedowns and stuff that they used whenever they were wrestling for state championships. That's what we used was YouTube to try to figure it all out. Mm-hmm. Just make sure that you're taking good care of your training partners. You're listening to each other and all that, because you can do some sick stuff.
Subordinate that ego.
Yeah.
Subordinate that
Absolutely.
ego.
Yep. Jiu-Jitsu is humbling. It is so humbling. I was training World's Strongest Man. I came in white belt and was rolling with some blue and some purple belts. And they just kept commenting on like how strong my grips were and all that. And then this gal who's like maybe 120 pounds, and I was like 215, and not like massive, but I'm 5'8", so I'm a load at 215. Oh, and she wants to roll. I was like, great. And she told me exactly what she was going to do. She's like, this is the move that we're drilling tonight. You're going to go for the armbar, and I'm going to put you in the omoplata, and that's exactly what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, cool. We'll see about that, right? And I kid you not, dude, she may have been like 115 pounds soaking wet in that gi, and I wanted to cry because it happened so fast and there was nothing I could do about it. I'm like, I'm totally helpless. And she got done and she was like, listen, your strength can be a really big advantage to you, and I know that the guys are telling you how strong you are, but if you don't figure out how to use some of these techniques and guard against it, it's going to become a liability.
100%.
And I was like, thanks. And she goes, all right, well, we got 4.5 more minutes. Dap it up and let's go. I was like, this is stupid. I quit.
I don't like you.
Yeah, this is it. Jiu-Jitsu's dumb. All right, last question
for you.
Ugh.
Oh.
I don't think.
Oh, what?
I'm going to go back to what I said off air, is that less me makes for a better podcast. All right.
Too late.
All right, well, you read this one since you picked it out.
I know you wanted to leave it off. At KOLPINATOR.
The Colpinator? You think it's Colpinator?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, that's as close as I got.
How do you address the principles of extreme ownership within the church governance? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Governance.
Church governance.
Yeah. What if your lead pastor is a narcissist and or controlling? How do we partner with our faith with the principles to see healthy solutions? Love to hear Lucas's input if he has any personal stories and how he got through it. Love what you guys are doing and how you're bringing the not church crowd into the light. Well, one, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for checking us out, Colpinator.
I agree. I would love also to hear Lucas's input.
That's why you picked this question.
Personal stories and how he got through it. So let's start with the...
we're about out of time, folks.
1, 2, 3. There's 3 solid questions.
Yeah, there are 3 solid questions in there. Well, let's just hit them in order. How do you address the principles of extreme ownership within church governance? The first thing that I would do is punt that out to Leif Babin and tell him to finish the book that he's got notes on and that we talked about at the Mustard. And
I mean the muster.
Thinks it. Nope.
Not a condiment.
It's not a condiment. We're not all getting together for
that
the Mustard.
One was super obvious.
I was trying to make it like really.
You've been slowly
really
increasing it. And I'm like, okay, I gotta
making
say
it
something.
more and more intentional. Because they're all biblical principles. If you look at cover and move, that's something that the disciples constantly did. And if you look at church history, that's the way that things happen. Peter was the leader of the church in Jerusalem. Pressure started coming down on Peter. The Romans started to hunt Peter. And what happened was Jesus' brother, James, decided he was going to take over the church in Jerusalem, and Peter was going to go and plant churches. They sent Paul and Barnabas out to go plant churches. When the two of them had conflict and they split up, they each found somebody else. Barnabas went with his cousin or nephew, kind of depending on how you look at it. Mark, the guy who wrote the gospel, Mark, and Paul took Silas. And then that was it. They had trained somebody, and then they were moving in different directions to plant other churches. So cover and move, really easy biblical principle. When you talk about simplifying things, that's what Jesus does. And if you look at it in all the parables, when the disciples ask questions, he brings it simply. The parables themselves, even though they are designed as riddles in order for us to figure out, they've got pretty easy, quick parallels and things that we can look at. Even in the books of poetry where things have a lot of simile and metaphor and those type of literary devices that are in there, it's easy to see the point that is being made if we just do a quick analysis of what we're looking at. You know, Job says, all my friends are jackals and they're all ostriches. All right, well, let's just look at what he's saying. We know that this is a poetry book, so how are we going to look at this? His friends are jackals. Jackals eat each other, so all of his friends are betrayers, and he gets counsel from ostriches. Ostriches are notoriously stupid, so all of my friends betray me and are stupid. Like, you can't put it more simply than that. You know, that's what he's saying. So we've got cover and move. We've got simple. Now we've got to move to those last two, right? Prioritize and execute. When Jesus sent his disciples out, he told them exactly what he needed them to do. Then they needed to go to the cities before him and to proclaim that the kingdom of heaven is near, right? And so that as he was going to those cities, that the way was prepared for people to hear the message, so that when he heard the message, that he would go and teach the gospel, he would heal the people. When Paul talks about the way that the gospel spread, he said that the gospel was made, first for the Jew and then for the Greek. And so what he would do is he would go to the synagogue and begin to teach at the synagogues, because the Jewish people were looking for the Messiah. And as the Gentiles were around in that area, they would begin to ask him questions. So the priority for him was go to the synagogues, preach about the Messiah, because they're already looking for him. And then, right, your next group is the Greeks. And the Greeks were way more interested in the message than most of the Jewish people were, because the Jewish people, as Jesus told in a parable in Luke, that they would see somebody raising from the dead and they would say, you know, that doesn't impress me much. And as a matter of fact, Jewish people still to this day say that. Ben Shapiro, who I think is a really interesting commentator. He is a practicing Jew, and when he was asked about Jesus, he said, well, the resurrection to me is just not that interesting. This is the exact same thing Jesus told people that they were going to hear. And so we see that prioritization, that executing, and as well as whenever Jesus is talking about the mission that you need to go to Jerusalem, Judea, and then the ends of the earth, you know, start with your home and then go to your state and then go to national missions and then international. That's prioritize and execute, that we're going to disciple people and then we're going to baptize them and then we're going to teach them everything that Christ has commanded, right? They're not going to be able to receive the commands of Christ if they haven't become a Christian. They're not going to understand what baptism is until they've made that commitment to follow as a believer of Christ. So it's prioritize and execute is all over it. And then decentralized command, I think, is the number one principle that we see throughout Scripture. And the place that I would go to is Exodus. Right? Do you have it pulled up?
Exodus 18, verse 8.
Yeah.
The Jethro effect.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, and we talked about this on the last Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu episode that's coming out. And it's just awesome how like the timing of all this works out. And this is something I wasn't aware of until recently when I talked to Pastor Tyron about it.
Oh, really?
And he was explaining it to me and I was like, oh, and then I started doing research on it and
this is huge.
Reading about it. And it's awesome. And Moses told his father-in-law and everything the Lord had done to Pharaoh in Egypt on behalf of Israel. He also told about all the hardships they had experienced along the way and how the Lord had rescued his people from all the troubles. Jethro was delighted when he heard about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel as he rescued them from the hand of the Egyptians. And then he goes on to say all these things. And then as you scroll down, let's see, where is it at? Let's see. His father-in-law, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, saw all that Moses was doing for the people, and he asked, what are you really accomplishing here? Why are you trying to do all this alone while everyone stands around you from morning until evening? Moses replied, because the people come to me to get a ruling from God. When a dispute arises, they come to me, and I am the one who settles the case between the quarreling parties. I inform the people of God's decree and give them his instructions. That is not good, Moses' father-in-law explained. You're going to wear yourself out. And the people too. Unique timing for this scripture for me as well.
Yep.
This job is too heavy a burden for you to handle all by yourself. Now listen to me and give me the word and let me give you a word of advice, and may God be with you. You should continue to be the people's representative before God, bringing their disputes to him. Teach them God's decree and give them his instructions. Show them how to conduct their lives, but select from all the people some capable, honest men who fear God and hate bribes. Appoint them as leaders. You're looking for integrity, right? You're teaching them, you're equipping them, you're giving them ownership. Yep. That's what you're empowering people to lead and make decisions. That's what decentralized command is. Appoint them as leaders over groups of 1,000, 150, and 10. They should always be available to solve the people's common disputes, but have them bring the major cases to you. Let the leaders decide the smaller matters themselves. They will help you carry the load, making the task easier for you. If you follow this advice, and if God commands you to do so, then you will be able to endure the pressures, and all these people will go home in peace.
Boom.
That's one of the things I said at the muster with my talk. I said there's a burden associated with leadership. And how you carry the burden is through the laws of combat.
Absolutely.
And it's in God's word. He gave us these answers in the word. Moses listened to his father's advice and followed his suggestions. He chose most capable men, blah, blah, blah. So he does all the things. Soon after this, Moses said goodbye to his father-in-law, who returned to his own land. So it was awesome. He humbled himself.
Yep.
Because Moses easily...
Number one quality of a good leader.
Moses easily could have been like, hey, I got this.
Right.
Hey, this is what God told me to do.
I'm the one that saw the burning bush, bro.
Yeah, where were you, old man?
Right.
I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm not mocking Jethro. But,
That could have been his attitude.
He easily could have done that. That pride, that ego could have crept in. But I also love the way his father-in-law presented it to him. He wasn't like, hey, you need to get the... He's like, hey, let me offer you some advice and may God be with you.
Right.
He showed compassion. He showed humility. He was able to communicate it to him. Man, it's so awesome.
Yeah. And so we see this here. We've got a great example in the New Testament whenever they instill the office of deacon. Right. Because what's happening is day in and day out, the apostles are feeding and clothing the widows and the orphans. Mm-hmm. And they don't have any time to study the word and to preach the gospel because they're spending all of their time clothing the widows and the orphans. There is nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, James says the true religion that God respects is to take care of the widows and the orphans. Mm-hmm. What was happening, though, is that there were people that were coming that weren't getting the message of the gospel because the disciples, the apostles, were giving food and clothes to the widows and the orphans. They said, hey, pick 7 from among you who are trustworthy men, who fit, who are good teachers, who have good families, that their kids behave, that their wives aren't quarrelsome. Pick these 7 guys, let them take care of feeding, clothing the widows and the orphans so that the apostles can commit themselves to the study of the word and the preaching of the gospel.
Awesome.
Boom. There it is. So decentralized command, simplifying, prioritizing and executing, and covering and moving, they're all part of what we believe as Christians. They're all very, very biblical principles. And it's not like we're not proof texting. They're not pulling a verse out to be like, oh, well, here's how Jesus used to cover and move. Go therefore and make disciples. Boom, that's cover and move. No, that's not it. These are like stories. These are historical church events. They're things that are within the scriptures that exemplify these principles. What if your lead pastor is a narcissist and or controlling? Mutiny. No, the best thing, the number one thing to do is to be praying for your leadership.
That is
above everything else, right? Especially if you think that the pastor is a narcissist, or if they've become overly controlling, because this is something that is so tempting for every leader. And one of the things that Jocko talked about at the muster, and one of the things that he talks about on his podcast, is that leadership is manipulation. And the way that it is, and to be very, very clear, because leadership is manipulation in this way. It is not manipulative, right? You're not being a manipulator whenever you're doing this. But leadership is casting a vision and setting an example so that the people you are in charge of are doing the things that you want and need them to do, right? Whereas a manipulator is somebody who goes and changes the little details around stuff and lies, and they start gossip in order to try to get the cogs moving in the way that they want them to go
for their personal gain.
For their personal gain.
And when you manipulate your team with the intent for their gain,
right?
That's the difference.
Yeah. Team first. Mission first. That's the difference between manipulation in a negative sense and what a leader does, right? But if you were to think that a leader doesn't do anything in order to try to get people to do what they need them to do or want them to do, those kinds of things, that's a very different kind of deal. So that said, prayer is the number one thing. The only thing that is going to change the heart of somebody who is completely arrogant or cocky or only looking out for themselves and can't see past the tip of their nose, which is kind of what we delineate as a narcissistic personality, the only thing that's going to be able to humble them is the Holy Spirit. And we talk about this in our church with people who aren't believers, and we talk about like praying ugly prayers. And that is like, I know that there is a friend of mine who is, an atheist, and he doesn't believe anything about the scripture. So what I have to pray is that the Lord would humble him so that he would understand his need for the Holy Spirit. And that means breaking down their ego. And your pride does not fall easy. It has to be destroyed. And the idols in your life have to be destroyed in order that you realize the grace that you need from God. And that's an enormous thing. So the first thing that we're supposed to be doing as not just as church members, but as members of Christ's body, is we need to be praying for our leadership. The second thing is remembering that you can lead up and down through the chain of command. And if you are a lay leader or you're just serving in your church and you're starting to see these kinds of things, one of the best things that you can do is to go and be inquisitive in a way that is non-offensive. By going and saying, hey, you know what, you've asked me to do this. I would love to be able to, to do this thing for you. Like if the pastor's like, hey, narcissistic thing that a pastor may do. I've seen this happen in a couple of churches that I actually served in, where one of the interns was doing the pastor's laundry.
No, what? No.
Okay,
No.
But this is like this classic kind of behavior is what we're talking about, right? So how do you lead up the chain of command when a situation like that is happening? Hey, you know what? I'm absolutely going to take care of this task. I'm going to do your laundry, and while I get it, I'm going to get it started. I'll bring it back to you. No problem. I'll have it done by this afternoon. I'm just wondering, is there something else that I can do that is more strategic as it relates to the mission of our church? I'm definitely going to take care of your laundry, but is there something that I can do that's church related? If that answer is consistently no, right, then you need to begin to ask other questions and escalate. There are parts of church governance that are put into place with the idea that we are not just allowed, but we're called to keep one another focused on our faith. And if Jesus came not to be served, but to serve. And we're supposed to have the mindset of Christ, which is what it tells us in Philippians 2:3-11, right? Humble yourselves, put the needs of others ahead of yours, take on the mindset of Christ, who didn't see equality with God as something to be gained, but rather humbled himself, taking on the form of a servant, was obedient to death, even death on a cross, so that by the name of Christ, every tongue in heaven and on earth and under the earth would confess that Jesus is Lord. That's what's being put there. If we're going to have that mindset, it starts with us humbling ourselves. One of the biggest ways to humble ourselves is to pray for somebody that we're losing respect for. And so when we do that, then we have the opportunity, and pray for those opportunities.
That is good.
Pray for the opportunity to speak into that and to talk with the other people that are in that chain of command, and to be an example of what leading with humility looks like. And the last one, do you have anything on that? I'm curious.
No, that was really good. That was really good. Honestly, I think we could have taken this whole question and done a full episode on
we
it.
certainly could have.
And we can always go back to it and dive deeper into it. So I have nothing to add to it. And
Sweet.
Then the next part, I want to hear what you have to say. But
how do
to
we
me
partner with our faith with the principles to see healthy solutions?
I feel like you answered that in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's
honestly.
that's kind of it, man.
It's so cool how it all overlaps.
All of this stuff does, whether it's the spiritual principles or the principles that you guys talk about at Echelon Front with extreme ownership. The biblical basis of extreme ownership is really, really easily seen.
Yeah.
And, tonight I was teaching a theology class on the constitutional nature of humans, which is a really weird way just to say, what is a person when we think of a person? Is a person, is it a trichotomy? Is it mind, body, and soul? Is it a dichotomy? Is it just body and soul? Is it monoism that soul and body are combined? Or what I believe is it is a conditional unity, right? And that conditional unity is that as long as I'm alive, my soul resides within me, but as soon as I die, my soul is a separate thing that's apart from me. And we see a lot of scriptural basis for that. The reason that I bring this up here with how do we partner with our faith with the principles to see healthy solutions is that if the constitution of a human is a conditional unity, then that means any directive that I see whenever I come to Christ has to be a physical directive, it has to be an emotional directive, it has to be a mental directive, and it has to be a spiritual directive. If I'm supposed to be taking care of God's temple, then that means I need to be spiritually nurtured. I need to make sure that I'm putting good things into my mind, that I'm reading good things, I'm exercising my mind. It means I need to be exercising my physical body, and it needs to I need to be making sure that I'm doing things to keep me emotionally healthy, practicing detachment and those kinds of things. So how do we partner with our faith and principle to see healthy solutions is realize that you have to seek healthy solutions in every area of your life. And like we said, that kind of answers all of it. Those are my thoughts. There you go.
Dude, that's awesome.
That's way too much talking for me.
No, it's not. That's awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you all for the support that you guys have given us by listening, sharing, subscribing, commenting. Those things really help us out a lot. And I know of people that have told me hey, I listen to it on iTunes because I'm driving, and then later on throughout the day I'll put it on YouTube and just listen to it in the background because they know that actually helps us out.
It does, yeah. It supports us a ton.
Which is great. If you want to follow us on social media, I am at JP Dinnell and Lucas is at Lucaspinckard. Please make sure you're also following Echelon Front at Echelon Front. And if you want to learn more about what we do at Echelon Front, go to echelonfront.com. I would love to see you at a future event or one of our instructors to be able to come work with you in your company. If you want, you can also go check out at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu _USA at Little Cattle Co. and
beef.
On the Path Printing. Yes, I am partners with the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu Ministry, and Little Cattle Co. is one of my companies I partnered with. On the Path Printing is also another company I partnered with. I just want to thank you guys for all your support. I just want to thank all of our first responders that are out there. And, November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month.
Whoa.
And so I just want to put that out there. Don't want to take away from somebody's story in the future, but I just want to bring that awareness. And for all of our cancer survivors, dude, what you guys have endured is incredible. And all of our people that are out there that are fighting cancer right now, I truly pray that you can seek God's peace and healing in these hard times. Cancer doesn't make sense. It's evil. It's vile. It's disgusting. It's clearly of the devil. And I am extremely apologetic and sorry for anybody that has to deal with that. You know, my aunt on my side and my aunt on Amanda's side, both cancer survivors, and it just wrecked them, man.
Yeah.
And it just wrecked them. So definitely thinking about all of you guys that are fighting that every single day. This has been the JP Dinnell Podcast, episode 7.